Hi, my name is Nicolas and I'm a Partner Solutions Architect at Amazon Web Services. Today I have Rick from Red Hat here to help me out with and tell me about Ansible and how it's able to be used with SAP workloads.
Yeah, thank you, Nick, for having me here. So yeah, I'm Ricardo Garcia, and I work at Red Hat as a technical marketing manager. So yeah, we can start, for example, talking about where customers can find the certified Ansible content for SAP.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, we talk about Ansible Automation Platform, and we talk about this concept of playbooks, and the playbooks are what the admin's actually going to write. And what is that actually going to look like? Well, that in a nutshell, in Ansible, and playbooks are all written in YAML, which is yet another markup language. And if we say YAML, we're just talking about YAML.
Which is pretty close to human language, right? It's very easily understandable.
It is. There's not. It's very straightforward. So, and you have, in a nutshell, we're going to be having a host in this file, which systems are we operating against?
Mm-hmm.
Which systems are we going to be working on? Then we also have these. We're going to tell it to include some collections.
Yeah. And
then we will have some tasks, which is some things that we're going to do, and which brings us back to collections. And collections are certified content. They're available at the Ansible Automation Hub, which is very important because this is downloaded from console.redhat.com. When you download a collection from console.redhat.com, you're not downloading it from a random repository or something that somebody posted that worked in their environment. You're downloading collections that are certified content that are tested and that what Red Hat supports to be used for these applications. So, for example, we're going to be talking about there is SAP. There's an SAP
install. So that's the first collection that customers may start using because it's used to do all the deployments, all the migrations of their workloads. So that's the first or the entry point, and then they have the SAP operations. So the SAP operations cover administration tasks, for example, backups, changing SAP parameters, starting and stopping systems. They can also do a kernel update and SAP kernel update. So those are maintenance tasks that SAP administrators need to do along the lifetime of the SAP workloads.
Yeah, and the SAP install collection would be more for when you're deploying systems,
so all the steps.
So if you're going to be doing something like a HANA setup or something
also
like
installation of HANA, installation of the application part, so S4 HANA or NetWeaver. Then, if customers want to set up a cluster either on the database or on the application side, you will have roles for that in the collection. Also, all the system rules that are applying the OSS nodes necessary before you install HANA and NetWeaver are there. So as we said, SAP install is for the deployment migration of your SAP workloads, SAP operations. Now that you have your workloads on AWS, let's manage them, and we'll use the SAP operations.
So all of this content in here is all certified content that's already pre-built. You're not going in here and writing this. This is something you're going to download. You're just going to say, hey, I'm going to use these collections right here, and I'm going to use them to accomplish these tasks. And it's not a lot of lines of configuration. This is not like you're writing hundreds of lines of bash scripts. Where these are very simple, straightforward playbooks. And the reason why they are simple and straightforward and readable is because the majority of the content is all in here in something that's certified, that works, and has been tested and validated. I'm also going to go ahead and put a plug in here because we also have AWS Collections as well. The AWS Collection has over 80 modules in it right now, so anything that you want to control on AWS, such as S3 operations, EC2 operations, networking operations, security groups, those are going to be available in this AWS Collection.
And ready to be used, definitely.
Okay, so all of this content is used in what we call the AAP system, a platform.
Yeah, the Ansible automation platform.
That's correct. And the Ansible automation platform, it can be used against, our EC2 instances over here,
Right.
and our SAP workloads. So we can apply playbooks against those.
Right.
It can also be just as easily, because we have these AWS collections, we can do that against S3 and networking in AWS, and that can all be in the same playbooks. So we can affect changes here as well. Now, we've talked a lot about all of these tools that we have available to us that we can deploy on Ansible, and it'll affect these changes and deploy infrastructure and take infrastructure down, copy files to it, make configuration changes, check to make sure that configuration is already there, which is a great thing. You can one of the great features about Ansible is we could take a playbook and we can run it in a check mode. Is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm.
So what we would do is we might have right now we have just we just have this abstracted away as workloads, but this could easily be 100 systems here, and we could run a playbook in a check mode against all 100 of these systems here, and it would tell us what changes would be made if we were actually running the playbook on all of those systems. And in that regard, you could see if there was one parameter that was out on one of these 100 systems, and you could go like, oh, I have one system that changed in that, which can be really useful information, and you can run that without making any changes on the system,
that's a very good feature. Yeah, in general, the Ansible automation platform aims to be the central repository for all your automation content. So, as we said, you download the content from the automation hub, but all the content that customers create that they will use will reside here, and Ansible automation platform will take care of all the hosts that are on your SAP estate.
One of the other things that I'm going to bring in here and highlight is the role-based access controls here. Those can tie into any kind of directory that you like, or single sign-on. But if for your admins or anybody that's logging in directly into Ansible Automation Platform, they can have role-based access controls in order to be able to affect any of those playbooks.
Yeah, that's very important.
Very granular.
Because, for example, imagine when we are deploying SAP workloads, if there's a playbook that needs to add new firewall rules to allow for the new host, the SAP host, to communicate, we don't want anyone to be able to run that playbook. It should be someone, so either from the SAP administration team or from the networking team. So, as you said, this role-based access control is very granular, and you can really say which team will have access to which playbooks, which is very important.
That's right. So now we're going to go through and talk about ways that we can actually trigger these playbooks. And the playbooks are utilizing all of these collections. So one of the ways we can trigger a playbook is manually. So we can easily have an admin using the role-based access controls go in here and trigger a playbook manually. That's kind of boring though. We have some more interesting ways of doing this. One way is with AWS Event Bridge.
Right.
So we can take events from AWS Event Bridge and have those trigger a playbook on AAP. So anything that you can take in as an event in the Event Bridge, send out a trigger, can integrate with AAP. We can utilize those events to trigger playbooks to perform actions on our systems.
That's very interesting.
Gives us some flexibility. There's also a feature that is in developer preview right now.
Yes.
It's called event-driven automation, and
That's for Ansible, event-driven Ansible, right?
that's correct. Should I fix that right there? So,
There we go.
event-driven automation. So,
Same thing.
so what's an example of an event-driven architecture? That what's kind of an
So
event? we can use?
event-driven Ansible can take events from different sources. So
Like Splunk or something?
yeah,
Or-
at the moment there are some sources that are available, and we're going to add more. For example, one of the main event sources would be Insights.
Okay.
So it would be a great combination. But for example, an event-driven scenario would be if we have an SAP system with different application servers, it's getting really clogged because the performance is going down a lot, and it's because the utilization of the work processes is getting to very high level. What we can have is this will trigger an event because the customer will have defined a rule saying every time this utilization of the work processes goes, for example, beyond 85%, then trigger a playbook from Ansible Automation Platform that will spin up a new application server.
Okay.
So it's an application server on an EC2 instance that will have been previously installed, but it's not up and running, so it's not consuming. Okay. When we need to spin it up because of the high utilization, it will be switched on and added to the logon group that the load balancer uses in order to dispatch the connections from the users. Once the load goes back again to below a certain threshold, these will be sent to sleep again, so it's been spun down again. And so that's one a very typical example of event-driven automation.
Okay, that sounds like it could be really useful. You know, another application that or use case that comes up is what we call end-of-month processing
Right.
or on demand. You know, so this might be an example of this might be our payroll admin, and our payroll administrator has payroll that has to be done at the end of the month, or maybe sometimes it happens in tax season.
Right.
And this payroll administrator needs to have an additional SAP infrastructure available to process this particular workload. Now, my payroll admin probably is not going to have access directly to the AAP. They're probably not going to be able to do a manual playbook. That's probably not in their wheelhouse. We don't really have a good way of triggering that via event bridge or event-driven automation. What we do have is integration with ServiceNow. So if your company is utilizing ServiceNow, we can integrate that with Ansible. And what does that look like? That workflow looks like your payroll admin going into ServiceNow to generate a ticket in the same way they do for adding an application to their desktop PC. And it says, hey, I need to deploy a server from this date to this date and be able to have it available to me to process this data. ServiceNow is going to take that information. It's going to go to Ansible Automation Platform. It's going to trigger a playbook. That's going to come down here, and it's going to deploy and configure this SAP system. And then it's going to run all the playbooks and do all of the testing, make sure that it's ready to go. Once it's ready to go, after the test is complete, it's going to report that its test is complete back to the automation platform. Then you know what's going to happen? Ansible's going to come back here to ServiceNow, and it's going to resolve this ticket right here. And so our payroll admin is going to get an email back that says, hey, your ticket's now resolved. You have an SAP workload that's scheduled, that's already deployed, tested, ready to do some work, and it's going to be up there for the amount of time that you allocated and put in your ticket right here. Another alternate workflow is sometimes we want to have a approval or a survey right here before this gets triggered. So we can come down here, and once this ServiceNow ticket is triggered to deploy a system, it's going to sit and stop right here and wait for an approval from somebody. And that can come, we can have an admin be alerted via Slack message or email, variety of ways that they'll go in and they will approve this. They'll look at that ticket and hit yes, that's okay to go. And if they give it a yes, it's going to go into here and then do its workflow. Correct. But if they see, for some reason they wake up and they see like 20 of these, and they're going to start to ask some questions. So that allows that extra safety step to be implemented and integrated into the workflow. And I drew this here just in the workflow, but this approval is actually occurring right here in the Ansible automation platform.
Correct. Yeah, I think that pretty much shows the use cases and the different way of consuming the automation.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of tools here that can be utilized to really help the SAP admin a lot.
Yes.
Thank you, Rick. I really appreciate you spending your time with us today and teaching us about this. Thank you for stopping by and learning about Ansible Automation Platform and how it can be utilized to affect your SAP environment.